this giant rescue mission executed by God himself to save humanity was in the works since the beginning of the fall. But isn't it interesting? How did God save humanity? By taking humanity to himself, by taking on a body, a human body, and living, suffering, dying, and rising in that body. That's God's plan of redemption. It's also how he reveals that God is a Trinity, an eternal exchange of love. But isn't this crazy to think that what saves us, what redeems us? Well, it's Jesus living, suffering, dying, and rising in his body. Well, why didn't he just do that when he was an infant? You ever wonder that? If all it took for God to save us was for him to die and rise. Well, remember when Herod was doing the massacre of the infants in Bethlehem just after Jesus was born? Why wouldn't he just allow himself to be killed there? Why did God send the angel Gabriel to warn Joseph and Mary to flee to Egypt? Or later on, when Jesus goes back and revisits Nazareth and they were going to throw him off the brow of the hill, why didn't he just let him do that there? Why didn't Jesus, all these times when people were going to kill him, why didn't he just die? Maybe it's because Jesus' mission to this world wasn't just to save humanity by living, suffering, dying, and rising, but also to establish a kingdom on earth, to establish God's community on this planet. Jesus came to establish a church. This is phenomenal, this is staggering actually, that after Jesus rose from the dead, he ascended to heaven, and what did he do? He entrusted the entire mission of his life to this handful of people living in this backwater Israel 2,000 years ago. And the thing that he had been planning for years and years and years, to rescue all of humanity, he entrusted to all these random people from Nowheresville. But God had the plan to redeem humanity in his humanity, but also through his church. Almost everything Jesus does illustrates that he came to establish a kingdom on this earth. The ancient kingdom of Israel was made up of how many tribes? That's right, 12. How many apostles did Jesus call to himself? 12. And Jesus promised that he would send the Holy Spirit upon these human beings that would guide them into all truth. That's what we realize, that even though Jesus called these human beings to become the church, he would give the Holy Spirit to guide them, to lead them, and to sanctify them. This is why the church is both human and divine. The church, God's kingdom on earth, is human because it's made up of human beings. But it's also divine because the Holy Spirit is the very soul of the church. You know, this is so incredible that even the apostles don't seem to get this right away. Remember in the first chapter of the Acts of the Apostles, they asked, after Jesus has risen from the dead, he takes them over to the city of Jerusalem. And they know that Jesus is the Messiah. They know he came to establish a kingdom. They know that Jesus is God himself. And they ask Jesus, Lord, are you at this point going to establish the kingdom to Israel? Jesus' response is absolutely stunning, because he essentially says, no, I'm not. What he says is, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, till the ends of the earth. Essentially, in response to the question, Jesus, are you going to establish a kingdom? Jesus says, no, you will. He's entrusting his mission of redeeming the world to these people. They don't have the ability on their own to establish God's kingdom. So Jesus realizes, no, he knows this. Jesus knows that they don't have the power on their own to establish Jesus' kingdom. And so he promises them that he would send them the Holy Spirit from himself and from the Father. And that would be the Spirit that guided them into all truth. 10 days after this, Jesus sends that Spirit, and it happens. Now the apostles were all gathered together in the upper room.